Hello, everybody. It's me, Amanda, with Once in a Wild. Welcome to Once in a Wild Wednesday live streams. We're live streaming on YouTube and Facebook today, as we do every time. So please stay tuned every single Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time for a free live stream event. The show is free as always. You're already watching it for free, no worries. But if you do want to donate to our zoo, there are many ways to do so. If this is the first time, hey, Gremlin. If this is the first time that you've met me, my name is Amanda, and Once in a Wild is our mobile zoo and also virtual zoo. And we do have about 70 different animals, actually a little bit more than that because we have more bugs. So those are like the extra animals. But we do have over 70 animals in our mobile zoo, and we do, of course, need to take care of them as always. So every donation helps. So the show is free, of course, so no pressure. But if you do want to make a donation, there are several ways to do so. The first and most fun way is by donating to our Amazon wish list. We did get a donation this week, and that was really, really fun. If I see that person on here, I will say thank you personally, and if not, message saying thank you. So thank you very much to that person. On the Amazon wish list that we have already pretty much arranged for you guys, no worries at all. Basically, you can pick the items that are on our wish list for the animals. How fun is that? And you can give us a little gift for the animals, and that is found at our website, which is onceinawild.com, which is down below, of course, and always in the description as well. Onceinawild.com, what you do is you basically go all the way down to the bottom of that web page, and you can click that box that says donate to our Amazon wish list. It's pretty easy to find. And another way you can donate is directly. You can actually give us a tip via Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal, which all of those are down below in the description, as well as down below on that pink bar below me. So that is very, very much appreciated. It helps us keep going, of course. We are a small business that desperately needs help right now, to be honest with you, because we are affected by COVID this year. So I know it's kind of a bummer to talk about, but it is the truth. We are also offering animal encounters, of course. We do specialize in animal encounters. And what does that mean? Well, that basically means we can bring animals to your home, to your office, to your wherever. Here in the San Antonio, Texas area is where we're based. But we can also bring the zoo to you virtually via Zoom, which is a really cool experience. And that is available to everybody all over the world. As long as you have the internet, you can book a Zoom room. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play our commercial for the Zoom, which will explain all about that. And that is also a really fun way that you can help us out too, as you might imagine. Let me go ahead and play that for you guys while we get ready with the first animal.
House with nothing to do? Did your students miss their fun field trip that was planned for them? Are you looking for a fun team-building activity for your employees that are stuck in the house with the same old Zoom meetings from day in and day out? Was your child's birthday party canceled this year because you're stuck in quarantine? Well, then we got the solution for you! Our Zoom Room Animal Encounters are a great solution for you. In Zoom Room Virtual Animal Encounters, we can bring the zoo to you, but from the safety of your own home. They are fully customizable, and you can invite all your friends to join in and meet all the animals. They are fun, unique, and very interactive. It's also a great learning opportunity. And most of all, it's very, very simple. Just contact us to book your appointment and schedule your Zoom room. Select the animals you would like to attend in your Zoom Room Animal Encounter, and then send the link to all of your friends and family who are invited to the Zoom room that we provide to your email. And best of all, we can send animals to anyone, anywhere, all over the world. So visit us at onceinawild.com or call us today. We can't wait to see you.
Awesome. I hope that made sense. And as always, thanks to Past Me for explaining all of that. And if you're interested in a Zoom Room Animal Encounter, please let me know. My number is down below. You can also contact us via onceinawild.com. Let's see who's checking in. While we're getting started, looks like Donna is here. Hello, Donna. Remember, this is an interactive live stream, as always. So please, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to tell me or ask me, please type them in below, and I will try to highlight your questions and, of course, answer your questions to the best of my ability. I am an animal specialist. I don't know everything, so bear with me if I don't know something. I will research it for you and let you know later. Hello, Bonnie, and hello. She's saying hi, Amanda, which is me, and hi, Donna, which is who always watches along. She's very, very supportive, of course. I'm just trying to see if anybody else is checking in. Donna's actually tagging all of her friends, which is really helpful. If you guys want to tag your animal-loving friends or family, that really helps us out as well. A free way that you can help us out is by subscribing to our YouTube channel and liking those videos, as well as sharing the videos and hitting the notification bell, of course. That is something new that we're doing, is being on YouTube. So the more likes and the more shares, the more we can outreach to people and let them know that we exist. So that's really, really helpful and, of course, free. Another thing is to basically follow us on social media. So over on Facebook, you can follow us, of course, if you're not already doing so. I'm sure you probably are already, and thanks to all of our followers already. And you can also follow us on Instagram, as well as TikTok and Twitter. We're all over the place. And if you want direct links to all of that, we have them in the description down below, as well as on our website, onceinawild.com. Now, another thing I almost forgot to mention, you might want to take a gander at my shirt. This is an available shirt, as well as other designs you can find at onceinawild.com. And that is another way that you can help out Once in a Wild and all of their animals, all of our animals. Who are they? It's me, all of our animals. And that is by buying merch, right? We do have some merch. We have our t-shirts, which are not just kids t-shirts. We do have like child models in the photos and in the website, but they're not just available in children's sizes. We can make them in any sizes that you like. So let us know if you would like one. You can order them at onceinawild.com, or you can let us know directly via message or texting me or something like that. Whatever you want to do, you can call us as well. And also we do have stickers. This is the same design that I'm wearing, but you can get it in sticker form, and you can stick it on things like water bottles and cups. This isn't a water bottle, it's a Yeti, but I do also have the Once in a Wild logo sticker, which is also available right here on my Yeti. A great way to help the environment, and by using non-plastic straws. You want to use like metal or reusable straws. They can be plastic, but reusable plastic, right? So one-time use straws are one of the worst things for the environment, especially aquatic life. And we do have our reusable Yetis as well that you can purchase. We don't sell them, but we do sell our stickers, of course. And we also have all kinds of animal stickers. We have 3 different designs, as well as some of the circle designs with the logo, which are really fun. This is an axolotl, of course. We love axolotls here at Once in a Wild, one of my favorites. I'm also wearing our Fiesta-lotl shirt, one of my favorite shirt designs. And we also have pins as well. Where's it at? There it is. So the pin is, again, the axolotl pin. For now, this is the only pin. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's really, really hard to see on camera here. See if we can see it a little bit better. But it's the same exact design on the shirt. It just doesn't say the Fiesta-lotl on it, right? So, but it is really, really cute. And we do have the stickers available in other animal designs. So check it out at onceinawild.com. There's all kinds of t-shirt designs as well. Let us know what you like and what you would like to own yourself, and we'll make it happen. That is a great way to help out. Alrighty, guys. I'm so glad some of you are watching already. Hopefully we'll have some more viewers as we go along. So today I thought I would theme our animal encounter here. Number 1, it's going to be our virtual animal encounter. Like always, we have 3 animals to meet and 3 different species. But I thought I would talk about endangered species today. Now, what does it mean for an animal to be endangered? Well, there are many, many levels of endangered. It goes all the way from least concern, which is not endangered at all. The animals are doing well in their own environment. This is in the wild only, right? And then there is all the way to extinct. So least concern, many levels in between, and all the way to extinct. So extinct is obviously what we don't want to happen with these beautiful animals, but there are many different levels of being endangered. I want you guys to know that first. And we're actually going to start with an animal right next to me. And speaking of axolotls, who do we have here? We have an axolotl. We're theming the whole talk today about axolotls. Pretty cool. Axolotls are amazing, amazing animals, and they are an aquatic amphibian. Now, all amphibians, the word amphibian literally means double life, but amphibian we think of underwater, right? When you're thinking about being amphibious, you want to be swimming or underwater, etc. And that's what an amphibian always starts out life as, being underwater, whether that be a frog, a newt, a salamander, all of the above, toads, all those guys at one point in their life started their life in the water, and that is an egg. So when mother amphibian decides to, well, I don't know if she decides to or if it just happens, she is going to lay her eggs. Father will, of course, fertilize them. Fun thing about, I think all amphibians is they're all fertilized outside of the body. and they are fertilized in the water. So they need that water to be able to fertilize their eggs at all. Otherwise, they can lay unfertilized eggs, kind of like a chicken does seasonally when they need to. If you have a female axolotl, she might lay some eggs and they wouldn't be fertilized unless you had a male in there, right? And the male will fertilize them. So it usually happens, I think always happens, externally from the body. So that's very, very interesting. But all salamanders, newts, frogs, all those guys, axolotls, toads, those all will start in the water with being an aquatic egg. And the eggs are very soft and squishy. They're almost like, they remind me of like little bobas. That's what boba tea reminds me of, is amphibian eggs. I know that's really gross, but to me, it totally makes sense. And they're real squishy and slimy. A lot of times they have a slime coat on them. So even like your desert amphibians, like desert toads or dry weather toads, when they're reproducing, they have to find some kind of water source to be able to reproduce, because those eggs have to be in the water, right? So when they are fertilized in the water, then they take a little time and then they hatch out. And every amphibian starts as a little worm-like animal called a tadpole or a larva. Larva is going to be the more general term, right, for that stage in their life. So they go from egg to larva, and then they're going to start to grow legs. They're going to start to lose their gills because they have to breathe underwater. So they are born with some kind of gills, right? And then most amphibians will lose their gills, grow legs. Some of them lose their tail, like a frog. Some of them don't, like a salamander or a newt. Those guys keep their tails. And then they can then come up on dry land. Some amphibians come up on dry land and live there a lot. Some amphibians come up on dry land and they just live there some of the time. They're not always out on dry land. They might go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Kind of a cool deal, actually. Most amphibians can kind of pick and choose what they want to do based on their environment. Now, all amphibians, to a degree, need water to survive, just like every animal, right? For the most part. I'm trying to think of any animal that doesn't need any water at all. Even animals that don't drink water, like, let's say like a Eurymastix lizard, they still need water in some form, like in their food that they eat. But a amphibian needs a lot more water in general, because amphibians have a slime coat. So all amphibians have to have water at some point, but this type of amphibian is very, very unique. I told you that whole giant story to tell you that this is an exception to the rule. There are a couple of different types of salamander that actually never grow up, if you will. So they never metamorphosize into adult form. They stay neotonic, which means they look like a baby, but they're adult sized. Isn't that crazy? So axolotls start as an egg, just like every other amphibian. They hatch out as a little larva or tadpole, and then they start to grow legs. And that's about where that stops as far as their metamorphosis. They just grow in size after that. So they start off as a little larva, very tiny, and then they get a little bit bigger, and they start growing legs in the front and in the back. And they keep their tail, they keep their gills, which are these frondy things on the side of their head that kind of look like hair. That's their gills. And if our axolotl here comes back over here, you'll be able to see his real gills, but I guess he's put himself in the corner. I don't know why that is, but he should come back, and if not, I'll lure him over with a treat. But this is Gremlin by 3 axolotls here once in a while. We have Ghost, who is actually a golden albino axolotl. She's very beautiful, but I feature her a lot on the show, so I thought I'd bring Gremlin. And also Gremlin is a wild type axolotl, so I wanted to bring the wild type version, and I brought all wild type versions of every animal that we're talking about today. So fun fact. They all have that in common. They're also all under the category of least concern, so they're all endangered in some way. But we're starting with a critically endangered animal. Way. But we'll get to that in just a moment. But Gremlin is the second axolotl that we have, and then we also have Goblin. Goblin is our smallest axolotl, and he's actually a melanistic or very dark colored axolotl. He looks very similar to Gremlin. Gremlin is a very, very dark version of a wild type axolotl. In fact, he's kind of melanistic too. Per the term melanistic just means extra melanin, right? So he's a lot darker than the typical one. They do change color a little bit, as a lot of amphibians and reptiles can. Depending on what's going on, how active he is and whatnot. When they are very, very active and breathing a lot, their gills will actually move like this. He was doing it earlier. And then their gills become red or more red, and that tells you that oxygen is coming into their gills to help them breathe. So these things on the side of their head, you can kind of see him. He wiggled them a little bit, if you can see way over there. I might make him come over here in a little bit so you guys can see him better. Sorry about that, but he's just doing what he wants right now. He's looking for something in the corner. Who knows? He's trying to figure out if there's going to be treats. You're in the wrong corner. I'm over here. I'm over here. They know the drill, though, and they know that coming out here in the studio means that they get lots of treats. Every time they come out here, they get some special foods. So those gills moving around, that's how they breathe. They don't breathe with lungs. And the major difference between them and most amphibians, they do develop lungs. So most amphibians are incredible animals. If we think about it, we kind of take for granted some of these smaller animals like frogs that we see all the time or that we're super familiar with. But do you really get to know all the things about them that are really amazing? Their total transformation in life, or things like a butterfly or most insects go through some kind of transformation. There are exceptions, of course. Not every insect metamorphosizes, but it's kind of like an insect if you think about it. That's a major difference between amphibians and reptiles. So people a lot of times clump them together in the same category, and they are considered to be what we call herps. And most people that work with amphibians also work with reptiles, just the way that it is. They're kind of in the same, category when it comes to being a zookeeper, etc. But very, very different in a lot of ways. One way is, of course, their slime. They have slime all over their body. Toads are a little more dry skinned, but they still have some slime. And almost every amphibian is toxic as well. In fact, I think every amphibian is just a little bit toxic at least, and some go all the way to very, very toxic, like poison dart frogs, one of my favorite species of frog. And there are many species of poison dart frog. I mean, one of my favorite types of frog is what I should have said. Those guys are very toxic, but many amphibians have toxicities in their skin, which help to protect them, right? Looks like Donna's saying hi to a lot of people. I'm so glad that you're all watching. I don't see any comments from them, but I'm so glad that they're watching. So I believe you, Donna. So anyway, the axolotl is a very special amphibian, though. Like I said, they rely on the water all the time. All amphibians rely on water somewhat, right? Like we said, to reproduce or to be alive, they have to at least drink water or become wet, moisturized, right? Their slime coat helps them to stay moisturized. Most amphibians have to remain wet all the time. So they have to kind of at least be in a very, very humid environment. A lot of amphibians are tropical. Some are from the desert, though, and they have to kind of adapt to those different things. There are amphibians all over the world, though. Speaking of which, oh, hey, Gremlin, we want you to come over here. Come over here, Gremlin. Their vision isn't the best, but they can see, in case you were wondering. I'm kind of trying to make some movement over here, so maybe he'll come over here and check out. He's over here trying to gulp some things that he thinks is food. Now, anyway, so these guys come from Mexico. So that is where they're from in the world. They are only from Mexico, and they are only from one little bitty place in Mexico called Xochimilco, the Xochimilco River Canal system, to be exact. And they only come from a very, very tiny place. I forget how many like square kilometers it is, but it's not very large at all. It is in Mexico City, right outside of where all the people live. So this species, hello. So nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. So this species is a critically endangered species. The next level below critically endangered is extinct in the wild, and then extinct completely. Now, I will tell you that this species here will never go extinct completely as long as humans are around. Now, that might sound counterintuitive because humans are the ones that are responsible for these guys becoming critically endangered in the first place. We are. It's completely man-made. The only other factor I would say that is a contributor to the axolotl becoming critically endangered in the first place is because they are from only one tiny place. So they already have a lot of pressure on them, having only one, this is two, only one twice, only, that's math, only one place that they live, and it's very, very small. Animals that only have a small area of space to live are already under a lot of pressure, even without human influence, to be endangered or worse, extinct. That has happened a lot in history, and that is exactly what's happening with the axolotl. So axolotls are from that tiny place in Mexico called the Xochimilco River Canal system, and it is right near the city. I mentioned it is all man-made reasons, besides the fact that it's already a small area. It's mostly because of pollution, trash, which is almost the same thing, but I kind of categorize them in two different categories because pollution is more to me like chemicals, which happens, and trash, which is like plastic. So things like plastic, which we want to avoid, right? We already mentioned that. We want to use our reusable cups and bottles and straws instead of throwaway straws, because that stuff almost never ever goes away in the environment, and it affects animals, especially animals that are aquatic. But it affects all animals, whether they be aquatic or on land or even in the air. So if you think about it, even birds are affected actually pretty highly by plastic. It ends up in trees and everything else. I mean, plastic is literally everywhere, but people know that it's in the oceans and in our river systems and in our canal system and lakes and everywhere, literally everywhere. We were just at the river this past Monday at the Guadalupe River here in San Antonio. Well, and we were in New Braunfels, and trash everywhere. It breaks my heart. It wasn't so bad right now because with less human activity, you have less trash. But there was a lot of trash still. And that's really heartbreaking because that's such a silly thing to be like for an animal to become extinct, essentially. These guys aren't extinct yet, but they're on their way to becoming extinct. So we have pollution from chemicals, pollution from trash, so plastic pollution and other pollution. We also have things called invasive species. Invasive means that animals are going into that area and they shouldn't be there. Invasive. So that means that animals are introduced, so cute. The animals are introduced to a certain area that they shouldn't be. Specifically, it's animals like carp and tilapia. So those are a couple of different types of larger fish that eat anything and everything that fits into their mouth, including axolotls. You're looking at about how large an axolotl can get. They can get a little bit bigger than this. Gremlin here is around 4 years old, and he potentially could grow just a little bit larger because they never really stop growing per se as a reptile or amphibian. They continuously grow their entire life until they pass away. So he could get a little bit bigger, but on average, they're around this size. Once they reach adulthood, their growth slows down a whole lot. Hey, Gremlin, why don't you come over here and see the people? They want to see you. They want to see you. Come over here. Everybody sing to him, and maybe he'll come closer to the audience. He'll eventually make it over here. My plan is to actually use a smaller enclosure here just for display purposes because, my goodness, they always like to go all the way over there. But trust me, when the treats come out, he'll come over. So anyway, but so that's a couple of their issues. So the carp and tilapia eat the axolotls, and they also eat the axolotls' food. What is the axolotls' food? Well, it's things like worms. Right, Ricky? Worms. Yum. So I brought him some treat worms. So out there in nature, they're going to, of course, eat worms that exist in the water, things like earthworms, night crawlers, and of course, larvae from insects such as mosquitoes. These guys are actually really, really important as an amphibian in general for the depletion of mosquito population. We want to keep those mosquito populations under control. Mosquitoes feed other animals, so they're not totally worthless as an animal, but they are huge, huge pests to humans and all kinds of species all over the planet. Mosquitoes and flies and gnats. These guys eat a lot of flies, mosquitoes, and gnats, as well as worms. They eat tiny fish. They eat all kinds of things. They'll even eat each other. They are cannibals sometimes if times are tough. So it does happen. And I guess if they knew they were an endangered species, they would cut that out. But let's see. A worm. I see you crying. Please don't cry. It's only a worm. This is a mealworm. Like I said, they're going to eat things like night crawlers and things in their own environment or mosquito larvae, etc. But this is like a treat for him. And they really like worms. Why don't you come over here? So axolotls don't see very well, but they do see movement and shadows and things. And they do feel the water vibrating. These guys are also mostly going to be on the bottom of our bed. That's partially why he's the color. But they do come up to eat bugs and things on the surface of the water. I'm trying to get his attention to show you that natural behavior, but maybe I just need to bring the food to him this first time, and we have other worms as well. They do kind of crawl along the bottom of the river, but they can also move very quickly to swim with their paddle tail. They have a big paddle-like tail. That's really cool. It's just like an overgrown tadpole's tail. Pretty awesome. And they can do that as well. But they don't swim too much. They swim to get from here to there, and then they kind of walk along the bottom. They're super cute. Why don't you come here? Show them how you move. Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe I need to bring it to him. There you go. Oh, that was an ever so polite grab of the food. But we'll give him some more, and we'll see what he does. And he's going to be out here with me the entire time because why not? He's out here on the table looking beautiful. Okay, let's see what you guys have to say. Oh, this is a good question from Ricardo. Are there any other similar species outside of Mexico? Yes, there are a few, including one right here in Texas, which is where we live, called the Texas blind salamander. And that is actually going to be found inside of totally dark cave areas in Texas. And that's going to be like underground. Well, it's underground, underwater cave systems. And that's where those animals live. And it's in total darkness. So evolution has taken place and given them no eyes. That's why they call them the Texas blind salamander. I believe they have no eyes whatsoever. They just have little indentations where their eyes should be at that point. And they don't need eyes. They get around by feeling the vibrations in the water and using their sense of touch and slight sense of smell and things like that. I believe they do have a pretty good sense of smell. I'm not an expert on the Texas blind salamander, but I do know a little bit about them. And I know they're similar to the axolotl. They don't metamorphosize and come out onto dry land. As a species, they stay underwater their entire life and just get bigger as an atonic kind of big baby. That is a good question. So there are a few, I should say, similar species, but this is the most famous one and my favorite, and it is critically endangered, which is what we're talking about today, right? So all those factors and more, including climate change, are going to actually affect this animal. Climate change actually affects every animal, right? But if they're already not doing well and they also live in water temperatures tend to rise and drop differently due to climate change and global warming and everything. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. The ocean gets warmer, gets colder where it shouldn't, gets warmer where it shouldn't. And these guys actually live in very, very cool water. They live in like around 60-degree water. It's like late 50s, low 60s, sometimes into the like upper 60s in the wild, depending on the season, of course. But the canal, the water in that canal system is very cold. It's very chilly. If you know much about animals, like 50 to 60 degrees or more, let's just say it's 62 degrees most of the time on average, Fahrenheit, not Celsius. And that's pretty cold. That's not warm water. 75 to 80 degree water is still kind of chilly too. So these guys prefer very, very cold water. Even in the care of humans, you have to give them cold, fresh water, which is not too hard in our care because we're indoors, right? We can have some air conditioning on, etc. But in the wild, due to global warming and some other environmental changes, so global warming, toxicities in their water due to chemicals, trash in their waters, invasive species being released into their waters. Ugh, it's awful. And actually, these guys used to also be hunted by humans. Now they're protected, of course. I mean, you would think. So that doesn't really happen anymore. But yes, there's so much against them right now. So what is being done? Well, luckily, axolotls breed very, 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 very well in the care of humans. I don't personally breed them because there's no reason for me to breed them. A lot of people do already breed them. They are very, very available in the exotic pet trade, to be frank. And they're also very, very available. Well, they're very easily bred, I should say, in scientific places too. In fact, axolotls used to be, and still are, I don't know why I said used to be, they still are and have been studied by scientists and doctors throughout the world to be able to study some of their amazing abilities. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But they do breed very readily in the care of humans, thank goodness. And they do have about anywhere from 500 to 1,000 babies each time. So that is another reason why I don't want to breed them, at least in this point in time in my life, because I certainly don't have room for 1,000 baby axolotls, and I don't have the means to distribute them to anyone because I'm not a breeder. So we're not going to do that, but they do have tons and tons of babies, as a lot of amphibians do. So that is one really good thing in the care of humans, like in zoos or under study or under conservationist study. They can be bred pretty easily. The challenge is, well, there's a couple of challenges. Challenge number one is genetic diversity. Since they are so endangered, we don't have a ton of diversity or axolotls not related to one another in the care of humans. It's just the way it is. And also these guys are bred in the pet trade, which is fine. I totally support that because it takes all the pressure off the wild animals. And they are bred specifically for people to have. But there's also different kinds of colors and things. And of course, we can't be having white or golden or special colored axolotls and put them back into the wild because they wouldn't blend into the background. And they would probably be eaten by all the things. Or their prey would see them all the time. So it has to be this type of axolotl, the wild type, and it has to be genetically basically selected. And that goes for all animals, by the way, in zoos. In case you don't know much about zoo breeding projects, is they're all very well managed for the most thought out. It's not just like all over the place, willy-nilly breeding whatever animal. That goes for most zoos that are very responsible, right? That's a big difference between responsible and irresponsible zoological facilities or zoos, is their way they go about breeding animals. So they're not just breeding them for looks, they're not just breeding them because it's fun. They're breeding them for genetic diversity with either the goal to have them in the care of humans, that way there's tons of them to back up that endangered species in case it does go extinct in the wild. These guys are critically endangered, so the next step is extinct in the wild. Without breeding them in the care of humans, these guys would likely be all gone. So, not to say that morphs and everything else and different colors are not a good thing. It's totally a good thing. But as far as for breeding for the wild to potentially re-release, because that is the long-term goal with these guys, that is what's being done in Mexico City and other places. So they breed really well, which is great. They have a little bit of low genetic diversity, but they're working with what they have. They're doing their best. The biggest challenge, though, is going to be basically taking care of their home environment, their natural environment in Xochimilco, and making sure that it's all the way better, or at least mostly better, and healthy for them to be re-released. Because the last thing they want to do is re-release a critically endangered species after all that work and put them back in there for them to just pass away again and to go extinct. It's really, really irresponsible to do that. So some things that are being done right now is cleaning up that environment, which is great. Lots and lots of awareness is being brought up around that area to make sure that people don't throw their trash around. Something for you to take on as well. Please don't throw your trash in the river. Please don't throw your trash anywhere. Throw it in the appropriate places, and please recycle and reduce and reuse whenever you can, because it is vital to helping out animals like amphibians. Okay, what do you guys have to say? Cannibals! Yeah, many animals are cannibals. Not just axolotls. Many, many frog species are also cannibals. Please don't cry. It's only a worm. This is a good question. Tanja says, so can they survive for any amount of time outside of the water? So not really. I mean, for a little bit. As long as they remain wet, they're not going to like instantly die. You could potentially take them out like this and put them in another body of water and they'd be okay. As soon as they dried out, though, it would be a big problem. So if, like, say their river system just dried out, they definitely wouldn't survive. Now, the only way they would survive is to actually metamorphosize, which does happen very, 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 very rarely. So these guys, like I said, they don't really metamorphosize into that adult form by losing their gills, gaining lungs, and coming up on a dry land like other salamanders do. They just want to be rebels. However, sometimes under extreme temperature change actually brings us on more than anything else. So if it becomes very, very hot, if it becomes very, very dry, or gradually dry, I guess, there's some kind of chemical stress, these guys can be induced to metamorphosize. Crazy, right? So they potentially could in order to survive, but it would just be under very, very stressful and kind of a last-ditch effort to be able to survive, if that makes any sense. But it can happen, although it is extremely rare. It would be under extreme circumstances and something that their body would have to basically stress out to do. After that point, though, I've been told, and I've never seen this myself, I've been told that if they do metamorphosize into a proper salamander, they don't live very long after that. They have a very short life expectancy after that. The axolotl, by the way, can live anywhere from 15 to, I think the oldest one was in their 30s. So I would say 15 to 25 on average is a pretty normal life expectancy for a captive bred and captive raised and captive kept axolotl. But yeah, that would be the explanation for that. I hope that makes sense. That is super duper rare and only under extreme circumstances. You're learning so much. I know you learn so very much. They're one of my favorite animals as well. Yeah, they're super cool. Yes, morphs of all different kinds of species of herps and really anything. If you think about it, dogs, cats, morphs are just color patterns and all kinds of different things that we've genetically picked out, pick and choose genetics as a human and selectively breed in order to get different colors and things. Pretty fascinating. I don't know much about that myself because I'm not a breeder, but I have, met a lot of breeders and been around a lot of reptiles and amphibians and all kinds of animals. Shall we give Gremlin another worm? I think we should. Yum, look at that wiggly worm. Gremlin, you're missing the whole show. What if I just bump him over here? Come here, Gremlin. Ever so gently, I'm just going to scoot some over here. Hey, buddy. Come and see everyone. They want to see you. And now, for that whole ordeal, you're going to get a little treat again. Here, buddy. Oh, you missed. There you go. That was a pretty good response. Axolotls, by the way, do not have teeth. They just have a hard palate. Kind of like some fish. Some fish don't have teeth either, but a lot of fish do. Most frogs and things also don't really have any teeth. There's a few species of frogs that do, and their teeth are terrifying. Right, Tanja? Tanja really likes axolotls, but she's not a fan of frogs in my what she's told me before. But yeah, they don't have teeth. They just kind of suck in food and bite it down with their hard palate and swallow it down. They're little gluttons. In fact, their scientific name, if you want to know, is Ambystoma mexicanum, which literally means Mexican glutton, or one who eats a lot of things in Mexico. Ambystoma mexicanum, one of my favorite scientific names. And one of my favorite animals, if you hadn't already figured that out. They are amazing, and it's really, really sad that they're so endangered on their way to becoming extinct. So just to give you a picture of how endangered they are, remember, there's many levels of being endangered. Least concern means that they're not endangered at all. Least concern is like, let's see, what kind of animals are least concern? Let me think about this. I want to give you guys a proper example. Least concern, maybe Tanja can help me out. Least concern is like an opossum. Opossums are doing great in the United States overall. We should always be conscious of them and taking care of our precious American people, but they are doing fine. They're very well adapted to city life as well as country life, as well as every weather situation. Opossums are they're doing fine. So that's an example of a least concern animal. We still need them. That doesn't mean they're not important. I want you guys to know something and myself to be very, very clear. Just because an animal is endangered does not make it more important than another animal. That is a huge belief of mine. We want to make sure that animals do not become endangered. So we must protect all animals. Now, that being said, there are things like invasive species. Invasive species are not bad animals. They're just in the wrong place. And they're causing trouble most of the time. Not every time. There are things like brown anoles. Let me think about this. Yes, green anoles are native to Texas. We have green anoles, which are cute little lizards that run around everywhere. And there are brown anoles. Brown anoles are a close cousin, but they're invasive. They're not from Texas. However, brown anoles don't really cause very many problems. They're still invasive, but they're not a very serious invasive species. Well, not too bad. But there are other invasive species, like we talked about with the axolotl, causing a lot of problems. Invasive species are responsible, and humans, of course. We're also an invasive species. Did you know that we're an animal too, and we're invasive? You guys are learning so much today, and I'm so passionate about endangered species. Yes, so that doesn't mean that they're more important than other animals. They just need our help now. We need to be helping endangered species as a human race, right? So what can you do? Well, you can visit zoos that have axolotls. We have axolotls. You can visit us or hire us if you like. Shameless plug. Once in a while, we have axolotls. We have 3 of them. So we take care of them, but we don't breed them. I'm not trying to be silly. Most zoos that have the axolotl are doing some kind of conservation work, or at least donating to conservation efforts to help this animal. So that's one way you can help. And most zoos that have amphibians in general are helping amphibians anyway. So that's a great thing that you can help with amphibians in general. Amphibians are extremely important to the natural environment, and that includes us. Amphibians are kind of like a warning system for the environment. So amphibians are affected by global warming. They're affected by pollution. They're affected by all kinds of things. And they're one of the first animals to become affected because they're very sensitive. They're sensitive to changes in water, like we mentioned. They're sensitive to toxins because of their absorbent, slimy skin. It's just the way it is. So a lot of times, have you ever heard of like a canary in a coal mine? I bet you guys have heard of the canary in the coal mine. Coal miners used to take a little bird, whether it be a sparrow, canary, or something like that, in a little cage, which is horribly cruel, but they would take it down traditionally to, if there was going to be any kind of, I guess, the chemicals and the smoke coming up from the coal mine, the bird would die first, or it would at least freak out and show signs of stress, and then they could get out of there. It was like a warning. It was an early way to detect a problem. So they're kind of like the coal mine for us. And that goes for all amphibians, not just our precious axolotls, which need our help very, very much. So how can you help out? Like I said, you can visit a zoo or aquarium that has amphibians and does amphibian work. You can donate straight to amphibian conservation, and if you want, I can actually put that in a comment or in the description if you like. There are many of them that help amphibians. One is called Frog Watch. Frog Watch is a really famous one. What else can you do? Basically, reuse. So instead of using plastic things like plastic straws and water bottles and things like that, we can reuse reusable items instead, like I showed you with my Yeti. I had the once in a while sticker on it. Here you go, buddy. Oh, you missed. There you go. Second time's a charm. I think that happened last time as well. He's super cute. Yeah, so those are a couple of things you can do. You can never ever empty your chemicals down the storm drain, or just dispose of them improperly. We want to dispose of our chemicals properly because the chemicals end up in the waterways, and that's terrible. We can not use things like really harmful pesticides. If you think about it, what does a frog eat in your backyard? What does a toad eat? What do axolotls eat? They eat bugs. So if we're poisoning all their food, what are we doing? We're actually poisoning them too. And that goes for a lot of, and it goes right up down the food chain, right? So if an insect gets poisoned with really, really harsh chemicals, then the frog eats that, then a snake eats the frog, and then a bird eats the snake, like a hawk or something like that. And then right down the line, maybe something happens to the hawk and somebody else, maybe the hawk passes away from the poison, and then a fox comes along and eats this free meal, or a vulture, right? Self-explanatory. So please don't use harsh chemicals. Do some research and maybe get professional green help, for lack of better terms. You want to have a ethical method of pest control. There are many, and that's a whole different tangent. Maybe we can do a whole different video. I'm getting way off track, but those are a few ways that you can help. And let me know if you can think of any other ways to help out amphibians in general, like the beautiful axolotl. Looks like you guys have a couple of questions. Ooh, that's not a bad word. Evolution just means change over time, right, Tanja? Not a bad word. She's not a frog fan, but frogs are very important, you must admit. All animals are important. And again, whether they're endangered or not, they need protection. They need to remain non-endangered, and we need to make sure and protect them, etc. The hard palate demonstration was the best. Are you talking about my demonstration or the actual hard palate? I have a hard palate and teeth, of course. This is a great question. Do you only feed them worms, or do you feed other types of feeders as well? Hello, Shanice. I hope your lovely husband is also watching. Hello, Tyrell, if he is. No, these guys get a varied diet. The mealworms that I'm feeding today are only treats. They don't get mealworms on a regular basis. They're not really that much nutrition, and they're not really very good for them. Although we do have some picky eaters sometimes, and they do love their mealworms. They're kind of like candy. But they also get a good, healthy dose of night crawlers and earthworms. So their main staple is going to be something like this, and I'll show you in my hand because it's hard to see. But this is a sinking carnivore pellet. There are many different brands. I can't remember what brand this is, but it's supposed to be really good. It's just a pellet diet. They have carnivorous fish, and I'm sure, Shanice, you know about carnivorous fish because you are a fish person. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that you like fish. You're a fish lover. So these guys eat the carnivorous sinking pellets, and it has a lot of nutrition for them. They are carnivores. They are bottom-dwelling animals for the most part. They'll come up to the surface to get larvae and stuff, but most of the time they're going to sink back down and kind of hang out. So they really enjoy these as well, and they're very, very good for them. This is the main nutritional value that they get. But if you're axolotl, if you happen to ever have one, anyone out there watching, they can also live on night crawlers and earthworms if they eat them well. A lot of them tend to be picky about those sort of worms, even though they're super good for them. It's kind of like us eating salad. Not everybody is super into salad, although it's good for us. But anyway, so they're more natural. But these sinking pellets are totally fine as well. So I do a little bit of both. All right, I'm so glad I didn't insult you by calling you a fish person. And yes, I'm so glad you're here, Shanice. So nice to see you. Okay, so let's go ahead and give him, let's go ahead and give him his carnivore pellet and move on to the next animal. I'm just going to give him a bunch of them. Let's see if he goes for one. Oh, yeah, super cute. And then I tend to just give him a bunch, and he should be able to vacuum them off of the bottom there as well. They don't just catch wiggly food. They also will kind of go around and try to find the crumbs as well. So that is really easy as well. I do recommend, if you ever keep axolotls, anybody out there, and they are actually pretty easy to take care of, I do recommend, number one, that you go with a larger individual who's already substantially sized. Or the baby axolotls sometimes end up pretty picky. I do have one axolotl that's a picky eater, always been like that, and I don't know why. The other two are vacuums. They eat anything. They're little hoovers. And then the other thing I was going to say is do not keep them on substrate other than fine sand. Fine sand is fine, but fine sand is fine. Of course, fine sand is fine. Fine sand is okay to use. And also, but fine sand does get really dirty really fast. These guys aren't the cleanest animals ever. They do require a filter. Not as bad as a turtle or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Turtles are the worst. But these guys, they are kind of messy. They do, eat and then it comes out the other end and it kind of just sinks there and is gross. So I tried the sand for a while. It looks really pretty, but it's really, really hard to clean and it's heavy and nasty. So I actually went with either nothing on the bottom or some of these tiles, which make it look nice. And they can kind of scoot around on the bottom. Now, some axolotls really like to dig, so maybe you can give them a little sand now and then for enrichment, etc. But that's what I recommend for their husbandry, as well as keeping them in a low temperature. So something that I like to use is a fan in the room. The fan keeps their temperature down pretty well. Some people use chillers and things like that. They're more expensive, so we just use fans. And honestly, it doesn't really get that hot. Another way you can easily kind of cool them off now and then is by putting some ice in there. Believe it or not, they really like the ice enrichment. It kind of gives them a little chill down, almost like a chill current or something like that. And they really enjoy it. They seem to enjoy it. He's snacking on his little piece of food still. So let me go ahead and get ready with the next animal. One moment. I'm going to set this up really fast, and I'll be right back with y'all in just a moment, if you don't mind. Thank you so much. Okay. So, of course, Gremlin is going to stay out here with us because I'm not going to move this entire water tank to switch animals. I'm just going to let him be beautiful behind us. I'm also behind the scenes, but he's just right there. Yes. So let me get back to your comments as well so I don't miss anything. Here is a good question from Tanja before we talk about this animal. I'll hide him. Can they be housed with any other species like little fish that will eat their poop? No, ma'am, they cannot. You know why? Because they will eat them. This animal will try to eat anything and everything that moves, including other axolotls, like I mentioned. And some people are successful with housing 2 or 3 or 4 axolotls together. It totally depends on the personality of your axolotls. It depends on the size of your enclosure. Some people have no problem in like a 40-gallon enclosure having 2 axolotls. They're not social, so they don't really, sorry guys, hair in my mouth. Aha, I found it. Hair in my nose as well. This is real life. They are not social, so they don't really need a companion. That's just for humans, and I would not recommend any fish with them. They will try to eat the fish's fins. They will try to eat the fish's eyeballs. Not a good idea. So I would not recommend that. Now, I am fairly new to axolotl keeping in general. It's only been a few years, but I have never seen anybody keep them with fish. I don't believe they would get along very well. Also, a lot of these fish are temperature, so that's also something to know. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend poop eating fish, although that's a good question, very good question. So I wanted to make sure and address that. Commercial break. This segment was brought to you by frogs with 4 smiley faces. Yes. Okay, Shanice already identified our next animal. This is our newest critter here at Once in a Wild. I'm so to have her. She is so cute and one of my very favorite species in the world. This is a young specimen of a Woma Python. We have named her Wonder Woma. Wonder Woma. So excited. This species of snake is from Australia. Unfortunately, they are also an endangered species in their natural environment, although pretty readily in the care of humans. And hopefully we can get their numbers up with the goal of re-releasing some of them in the wild in the future. These guys are kind of a dry weather species for the most part. They do dwell in places like grasslands, scrubs, a little bit of desert, but not so much desert as was once thought. It's more forested regions, scrub, grasslands, things like that. They often are subterrestrial, meaning that they go into dens and caverns and, well, caverns, dens and burrows under the ground. And that is for a couple of different many reasons. Number one, to stay safe. Being inside of a home is always safer than being out in the open, right? And these guys are actually prey for other animals as well, especially small and young Woma pythons. Now, what eats them? Well, mostly other snakes. There are snake-eating snakes in Australia. This is also a snake-eating snake. In fact, Woma pythons are immune to snake venom, even Australian snake venom, which is very, very toxic most of the time from those species. They can eat other snakes too. So they're not innocent as well. They're another cannibal. Cannibals everywhere. Watch out. I'm sure Tanja doesn't mind. She likes horror movies. But these guys are cannibalistic sometimes as well. So we're not going to keep Wonder Woma with any other snakes either, or other animals. These guys do mostly eat rodents, but they, like I said, will eat other reptiles like snakes. So they're not very picky. It's almost like the king snake of the python world. Now they are a python, but they're a very primitive python. As you can see, excuse me, ma'am. She doesn't resemble most pythons. That's why they're one of my favorites. They're very, very unique. They have a very slender body, a very slender head as well for a python. And they have really cool coloration as well. Their coloration is to help them blend into the Australian scrublands and grasslands. Aren't they gorgeous? Like I said, they will go into underground burrows. Oftentimes, they will just kind of go into a burrow that they find that's already made by a mammal, like a rat or a mouse or something bigger, like all kinds of things that burrow. And they'll go in there and eat the animals that live in there. And then they'll kind of live in the burrow for a while, similar to a ferret. If you've ever seen one of our ferret talks out here once in a while, they're kind of the ferret of the python world, I guess. Now, they are primitive species. So they don't have heat pits like most pythons have. If you know ball pythons, that's a great example of heat pits on their lips. That is something that the the Woma and the black-headed python do not possess. So scientists think that they are very primitive in the evolutionary world or in the line of things, right? Right, Tanja? Wink, naughty word. No, it's not. So these guys are pretty primitive when it comes to being a python. They have been around for a long time, and they don't have heat pits. Like I said, they're also very slender bodied, so they're very different, and they're just super special. These guys are also very tame. They're known for being tame, even as a wild specimen. They're very sweet and docile to humans. They don't see humans as really a threat, or they should though, or as a food item. So they tend to just kind of relax and be held. As you can see, this one is only about a month or so old. Super cute. And it's already accepting handling very, very well without any problems whatsoever. Are kind of like the colubrid of the python world, which is really cool. Colubrids are my favorite group of snakes. Colubrids are like king snakes, rat snakes, corn snakes, all those guys, kind of like your extra category. And they behave more colubrid than a python, but they're still genetically a python. Isn't that crazy? However, they don't have heat pits, and they are slender body. That's what makes them kind of special. Now, the reason that they're becoming endangered in Australia and are endangered now is due to habitat loss, and also, of course, wildfires and things like that destroying their homeland, and also due to all kinds of problems, like invasive species with feral cats is a big issue for them and all Australian wildlife that is smaller. Anything that a feral cat can eat, they do eat, including snakes, believe it or not, and all kinds of things. And that does affect them, as well as other invasive species, like all kinds of things. If you look up Australia, there's tons of invasive species all over the place, so not great. So these guys are losing some of their food sources. They're definitely losing their habitats, and I'm sure there's another reason, but all kinds of things. But it's mostly habitat loss is why they're becoming endangered. Now, the hope for them is that we can, of course, breed them and re-release them back in their homeland. As soon as the wildfires are taken care of, or I guess less wildfires, etc., they'll start working on that more. Now, these guys are really cool because they have this striped pattern or banded pattern. Striped and banded. Kind of look like a tiger's tail. Pretty cool. And then their head is a solid kind of orangey yellow color. They do change color a bit as they grow, but they have this general coloration. This is the wild coloration that they look like, believe it or not. So pretty and so unique. Love it. And they do have this beautiful orange head with kind of dark markings near their eyes. And they do have kind of a dark snoot as well. So that's very unique to a Woma Python. Can you see that? Pretty cool. Let's see what you guys have to say about Wonder Woma. Woma, yay! Yes, indeed, Shanice. Very excited to have this Woma. It was gifted to us here at Once in a Wild, and we're very, very happy to have her. So excited. Good points. No problem. Anytime. Cannibals rock. There are many cannibals in the animal kingdom. In the cannibal kingdom. Wink, wink. Yes. Absolutely. So these guys, they do have some really cool different adaptations as well as habits that are unique in the python world as well. If you know much about pythons, pythons are constrictors. These guys are constrictors too, but they don't really constrict in the same way normally that a python does. As you can see, they're kind of slender bodied. They can constrict a little bit, but most of the time these guys go hunting inside of a very, very slender burrow underground. And that's usually going to be kind of narrow, right? And that's why they're so narrow bodied, is because they've adapted to be able to go into burrows and hunt and also live inside of burrows underground. That also helps them to stay cool in the hot, hot weather that is usually Australia, right? But they go in there and they eat. But what they'll do is they'll catch their food. These guys also, I've just researched, and I hope it's true, but somebody told me this on per research on a video that I watched, is that they have better eyesight than most snakes too. Most snakes have terrible eyesight, but these guys actually have big eyes for the size of snake they are to be able to see in those burrows a little bit. Of course, they have a great sense of smell and their forked tongue, like all snakes do. All snakes can smell with their tongue. And they have a forked tongue that helps them take in scent particles and tell them information with their Jacobson's organ, which is an organ they have that's specialized for smell. Tells their brain all kinds of information, just like all snakes. But they also have pretty decent eyesight for a snake. It's still not great, but it can see more light and things like that under the ground because they do dwell underground most of the time. But these guys will go in and they will grab an animal after sensing them either by sight, vibrations, or smell. Probably going to be smell most of the time. That's a snake's best sense in general. But these guys will go in and say it's just maybe it's like a rat underground. And they'll grab the rat and they'll actually pin it to the side of the burrow underground. Usually it's kind of a hard, like rock hard burrow on the side of the wall or whatever. They'll grab it and they'll kind of semi-constrict it, but also pin it up against the side. And that will actually kind of suffocate the animal via that. So it's almost like tool use. If you think about it, they're using the side of the wall, but still pretty neat. Not like most snakes. And they will do that. Similarly, if you know much about bull snakes and other animals in the same kind of genus as the bull snake, those guys will actually pin animals up against the side of things too in a similar way. But a bull snake is a colubrid, not a python. So these guys are kind of the most colubrid-like of all the pythons. It's pretty awesome. I think they are so, so special. And it's really sad that they're becoming endangered. Luckily, they're not endangered in human care, right? So hopefully we can keep them going regardless if they, worst case scenario, they become extinct or even more endangered. So these guys are, like I said, this is critically endangered. Next step is extinct in the wild. These guys are endangered right in the center. That's right in the middle of all the classification of endangered. So you're basic endangered. You're so basic. Just kidding. Let's see. This is a good question. Tanja says, so she is going to stay pretty narrow even as an adult size. How long are we expecting her to get? Thank you very much for segueing into that. I was going to mention that. These guys are a fairly slender-bodied snake in general, yes. And depending on their location in Australia, these guys are kind of found throughout Australia, or at least they used to be. But in the old days, it was kind of widespread. Nowadays, much less, unfortunately, because they're endangered, right? But they're from different areas of Australia. So depending on their location is depending on the color and the size of your Woma Python. Woma Pythons can be anywhere from, like on average, they're 4.5 to 7 foot long for your kind of basic Woma Python. Those are the ones that are found in the care of humans most of the time. I'm not really sure what kind of subtype this is or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna love her anyway. But there are also other Woma Pythons that can get anywhere from 7 to 8 feet long. That is definitely a thing as well. So time will tell, I suppose. I'll have to ask the breeder that we know that she came from, what type. It's probably the more common type, which is anywhere from typically 4.5 to 7 at your maximum. Of course, they never stop growing, just like all snakes. And they are a fairly long-lived snake. They can live about the same length as most pythons. So their life expectancy is anywhere from, I would say 20 to 30 years. So as long as she's alive and growing and doing well, she should grow pretty large, right? So yeah, but that's like kind of an average thing. Like I said, it depends on their location. But at the maximum, they could be around 7 to 8 foot. So it's still a pretty large snake. But of course, it's not like a Burmese python, reticulated python, etc. They're not too large. They're actually a very, very well managed and well manageable snake. That's one reason I really, really love womas, is I do love reticulated pythons and Burmese pythons and all those guys, but they're a little bit hard to house, and they're certainly hard to like carry around by yourself, etc., and care for by yourself, which is usually, you know, it's me taking care of these animals, not gonna lie. So having snakes that are a little bit easier to manage is my preference, although I do love all those large snakes too. Maybe someday we'll have some larger constrictors as well. The largest one we have currently is our Colombian Boa Constrictor. His name is David Boa, and David Boa is still a juvenile size. He's around 4 to 5 foot right now. Yes. But yes, they do stay narrow. So the thickest they get is about like that, more or less. So they're not like a huge fat-bodied snake. They're pretty slender, and we don't power feed here at Once in a Wild. We're going to feed at an appropriate rate, so usually about once a week, more or less, and that's what we're going to offer. If she doesn't eat that week, it's okay, you know what I mean? But we're not going to feed like 3 or 4 times a week, which is called power feeding. That actually lessens your animal's life expectancy. So we're just going to let her grow at a good rate and make sure she's, you know, doing well and all the things. Speaking of care, these guys are pretty easy to house and manage. Like I said, they don't get too big, and that's going to be maximum, right? So 7 to 8 foot. 8 foot is going to be really huge for a Woma. So I'm going to say 5 to 7 is probably your average, right? And females are larger than males, by the way. And so they're not too super large. They are a pretty dry weather snake. They tend to not have any shedding problems because they prefer drier climates. During their shedding cycle, when they start going into shed, it's always a good idea to give them maybe like a moss box so they can get in there and help them shed. You can mist them a little bit when they're in shed, but they don't require daily misting. They require a water bowl, water dish of some kind, and of course their food to help them get some moisture that way. But they're not going to be a snake that's tropical, so they're pretty easy to care for. It's almost like having like a corn snake that just gets really, really big. So they're pretty awesome. And even their personality is similar to a colubrid like corn snake as well. I just love them to death. They're one of my very favorites, and we're very, very happy to have her. Wonder Woma. We picked the name Wonder Woma because we thought that was so cute. What other questions do you guys have about this or the axolotl so far? Oh, one really cool thing about the Woma, before I forget, is their adaptation to be able to stay cooler during the hotness of Australia. So when it's really, really super warm in Australia and hot, the ground gets really hot. So not only do they go underground most of the time when that happens, they also have the ability to not have their belly touch the ground very often. I'm going to see if I can show you as best I can. I know she's very, very tiny, and I appreciate you guys loving her, even though she's just a baby. When she gets bigger, you'll be able to, oh my gosh, cool. So they have kind of a narrow back like this and a very narrow belly especially for a python, but for snakes in general, their belly scales or their ventral scales or scutes on there are pretty narrow if you know much about snakes, especially like comparison to like a ball python. Ball pythons are fat and wide, huge. These guys are more slim, a very, very narrow belly. That's going to help them have the least amount of belly on the ground that they can to be able to stay cooler in the hot Australian heat. Isn't that an amazing adaptation? So that's why they're so narrow bodied. They almost look like a sea snake to me, right? Sea snake on land. I love them. And they are terrestrial. They can climb a little bit on like some like fallen branches and things like that, like all snakes can a little bit. Even ball pythons, right, Tanja? Even ball pythons can climb just a little bit. This can certainly climb a little bit. But they prefer to be on the ground. So they have that amazing belly to be able to mount a surface area on the ground to stay cooler. They kind of move as well when it's hot, like kind of move like a sidewinder, a little bit less graceful than a sidewinder, if you know what I'm talking about. That's a type of viper. So, but it's similar to that in the way that they avoid touching their belly to the sand or the dirt, etc., in the hot Australian sun. Oh, thank you very much. We always try to be a little bit creative with our animal names, as you guys know. Yes, but she'll be a very narrow-bodied snake, as we said. Another thing that's neat is their little eye markings. Like I said, trying to Where's she going? She's very active. That's one thing I really like though about womas is I really like an active moving snake as opposed to just a ball python that doesn't move. That's just my preference. I like animals to kind of be active and moving around. I find it way more interesting as a keeper. Although ball pythons are active too, depending on the time of day. They're more nocturnal, right? Like a lot of snakes are. I don't believe this is a nocturnal species, although I do need to look that up and learn with you guys. I don't know for sure if this is a nocturnal or diurnal or crepuscular species, but I think they're more diurnal than nocturnal, but that's just me guessing. But anyway, these guys, what was I saying? Oh, they're more active. So they do move around quite a bit. So that's one like kind of fun thing about them. But I want to show you the face to see if I can gently kind of encourage her to not move. There we go. You can see those little eye marks. They almost look like great big eyebrows. And there's a dark nose as well. The eyes are really big for a snake. I know she's a tiny snake right now, but as she grows, you'll see the eyes are pretty big in proportion for a snake. Most snakes have super tiny eyes, right? Because they can't see very well. They don't need to see very well. These guys do. They need to be able to go underground and see at least some. Their eyes are dark and large, and they have those markings. The markings are debated upon as to why they have them. One is to help reflect the sun, kind of like a football player putting the paint right here. What do we call that? Is there a word for that? Where they put the black mark when you're playing sports. It helps to reflect like a sunglasses. So that's going to help them as well. That's one theory. Another one is to divert a prey animal, since they do they're kind of rough when they pin their food to the side of the wall. Like I mentioned, it's kind of a totally different way of doing away with your prey or killing your prey than a python usually does. Pythons usually have that death grip around their prey, and that animal is in no time. These guys kind of take more time, and they also use that pinning method. So because of that, they need a way to basically elude. There's an illusion around their eye as to where their eye is, so the animals don't go straight for the eyes, right? So just like a killer whale or orca has the big white stripe right here on the side of their head to divert that prey, like a seal, away from their actual eye, which is very tiny. That's also another theory as to why these guys have the dark eye marking, which is pretty awesome. And there's other reasons too. I mean, there could be something else that we just don't know. Do we know why? I don't know. It's just a guess. But that's what we think. Pretty awesome. Well, this is a beautiful snake. How can we help snakes all over the world? Again, we have an Australian species. So whether you want to venture to Australia someday and help ecotourism, that's a really great way to help. Same thing with Mexico. You can go to Mexico, which I highly recommend once Corona is safe again, and you can go anywhere for that matter. But Mexico is beautiful and wonderful. I've been to Mexico City myself and seen exactly where these guys live. It's amazing. So that was really cool. That's one way you can participate in ecotourism, by helping the environment or contributing to conservation in that way, right? You can also help snakes in general in any environment by not killing them. Snakes are extremely important animals. They eat all kinds of animals that we need to make sure to keep under control, like rodents. Rodents are good animals too. They have their place. They are food for most animals. And they also have their own purposes too, other than being food. But it's really, really important to have animals like predators, snakes included, to be able to deplete those populations enough to have a balanced ecosystem, right? Snakes are very important. Even venomous snakes are important. Please leave them all alone. If you have a snake problem, always call a professional. Please do not go and handle snakes in the wild unless you are a professional of some kind, or a herpetologist or a herp lover of some kind, and you have experience or somebody with you that can help you. We do not recommend you guys holding wildlife in the wild if you're inexperienced. So please don't do that. That goes for amphibians as well. Please don't pick up amphibians, because we can actually harm them with our oily skin. We can give them all kinds of problems by distributing oil onto them, since they can absorb things through their skin. That's not good for amphibians. So we can not destroy snakes. We can advocate for snakes and make sure everybody knows that they're very important. Leave them alone. Walk away if you're afraid of snakes. Take a photo if you want to. I will always help you identify snakes if you find one and you don't know what you're looking at. I do that all the time, almost on a daily basis. So I never, ever, ever mind if you guys want to shoot me a text or a message helping you identify an animal of any kind, but snakes oftentimes are misidentified and people harm them. So that's one way you can also help as well. Another way, again, is by not using rodent poison or any kind of poison in the environment, because rodent poison will then affect The rodent eater, right? Like snakes in general, not just the Woma. That's an endangered species. There's other endangered species of snakes too, and predators of all kinds that eat rodents and other animals. So we want to make sure not to poison their food too. And please don't use sticky traps as well. Sticky traps are not poison, but they stick to almost any animal that touches them, right? Any animal that does. And that can be very, very harmful to any animal that comes across that sticky trap. Please do not use those. Those should be totally illegal in my opinion. They are really, really awful. Okay, enough negativity. You guys can definitely help animals in more ways than that. And please let me know in the comments what other type of conservation efforts you think that you guys can make in your own backyard. That might be fun to have a discussion about that. Oh, here's a good question. Hello, Emaluz. How are you? How do you keep it at home if it moves constantly? Well, every animal in our care has their own enclosure or personal home that they live in, right? So this snake as well has its own enclosure that it lives in, and it's a pretty small enclosure right now because it's a small snake. Now, the reason that we give it a smaller enclosure and not just like a huge giant room to live in is number one, we have to control their heat. So this type of snake enjoys very, very warm environments, but a heat pad is more than enough to suffice, or you can use a ceramic heat emitter if you guys are interested in learning more about Womas and how to care for them. They do need some heat to be able to digest their food and to be healthy. So if I kept them just in an air-conditioned room, they wouldn't do well. They would also get into things and get lost. So it's definitely not recommended to let snakes just free roam. Every snake needs their own personal space, if you will. That is very, very secure. Snakes are also escape artists, so we want to make sure that doesn't happen as well. She's very precious to us, and she's an endangered animal. We don't want her escaping, right? So that wouldn't be good. So definitely a secure lid, a little space for herself. And as she grows, she's going to, of course, get a larger space to grow up in, of course. But yes, they are definitely not just let run around everywhere or slither around in this case, I suppose. Same thing with the axolotl. Of course, the axolotl needs water to be able to thrive and live, to be in a water tank, not just everywhere. I hope that answers your question. If that's not what you meant, please clarify, and I will help you figure out the answer. That is fine. But yeah, they do move around quite a bit when handling them and in their own enclosure. They're really fun to watch. And like I said, don't worry. As she grows, she'll be able to get a bigger environment and grow. You know, we won't keep her in a small enclosure anymore. So don't you worry. Everything's appropriately sized for our animal. Okay, Wonder Woma, you were an absolute angel. I think these guys are just the best. Best Python ever, in my opinion. Everyone each to his own opinion, I guess. I just think they're so wonderful. Okay. Another close relative, or at least semi-close relative, is going to be the black-headed python, which looks a lot like the Woma, only it has a black head. So they do live in a little bit more of a humid environment than the Woma python. Womas are more dry weather, but they are very similar otherwise. But another animal in the same genus, also without the heat pit. So they're more primitive python as well, and they also live in Australia. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and let her rest down below, and we'll get ready with the next animal. How do you feel about that? I think you guys would like that. Okay, one moment, please. All right. Invisible animal. Just kidding. I'm just going to get her out in just a moment. I want to make sure to address anybody's comment that I've skipped. Certainly not on purpose. She is excellent already. I agree. She's a great animal ambassador already. Womas are known for their very kind of easygoing, handleable personalities, which is why they're so sought after in the trade, if you will, and zoos and educational programs like here Once in a Wild. Once in a While, there it is. Again, we are Once in a Wild, a mobile zoo. We bring the zoo to you here in San Antonio, Texas, as well as all over the world virtually. If you have the internet, we can bring you an animal program just like this, but you actually get to customize which animals that you get to meet in your encounter. So let me know if you're interested in one of those. The next segment is brought to you by worms. Yeah, let's go ahead and feed Gremlin the rest of these tiny worms that I brought for him. I'm sure he's pouting over there because he wants more worms. Here, Gremlin. Yum. There's a couple more for you to eat at your leisure, Gremlin. Good job. Yeah, why not? I think he deserves another treat. What's my hair doing? There we go. Okay, guys, let's meet our last animal. Now, remember, we're talking about endangered species or some form of being endangered. And don't worry, we're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. We just have a little bit left to go, and then we'll say goodbye until next week, which is Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central. If you guys want to tune in next week, we would love that. Please do not miss our September 5th show, which is a special time, and I think it's 10 a.m. But we do have an event going on with Once Upon a Party once again. Last time we had Moana on here, the show with us. On the show with us. It was really fun. And and this time we're actually going to have Spider-Man. So as you can imagine, what kind of animals are going to be hanging out with us and Spider-Man? I'm so very excited to have Spider-Man coming onto the show. He's one of our favorite superheroes. And yes, this should be a lot of fun. That is going to be September 5th at 10 a.m., a special time, of course. But I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Bring all of your kids and all of your adults. It'll be family friendly. So we're talking about endangered species, right? And we're talking about, just because we're talking about them, for the animals that we brought today, from most endangered to least endangered. So we had the critically endangered axolotl. We're working our way backwards to the endangered Woma Python, which we already saw. And now we have a vulnerable species, which is not yet endangered, but still needs a lot of protection. I'm trying to keep it a secret from you guys. It's a vulnerable species found in New Caledonia, which is also in the Australian continent. I think she's going to make an appearance, whether or not I keep her a secret or not. So here she is. This, I promise you, she's not shaking. I'm shaking because I'm getting weak from holding my hand up all night. So this is Rue. Rue might jump towards the camera. Just be aware. They do jump. This is a New Caledonian Crested Gecko. New Caledonia is a cluster or grouping of islands right next door to the mainland of Australia. Yeah, I told you. If she turns off my computer, I apologize ahead of time. She's already turning down the brightness on my computer. They are an arboreal species, and they do jump, just like that. They can jump away from danger. Maybe we'll hold her like this. Don't leave, Rue. You're part of the show. I don't know how long she's going to last. So this is a really neat gecko species, which, of course, is a type of lizard. These guys have a really, really fun historical story, because they were discovered in the 1860s. I think it was 1866, as far as my research indicates. In 1866, originally discovered in New Caledonia, which is an island system right next door to the Australian mainland. Still in the Australian continent, of course, or Australasian continent, whatever you want to say. And she's going to leave again. See if she jumps. Boop, boop, boop. You're not going to jump this time? Make a liar out of me. These guys are really cool. They originally discovered in the 1860s, like I said, and then they thought that they went extinct all the way up into 1994. They were rediscovered. We go back here. Can you even see her? She's so tiny and cute. They were rediscovered in 1994. And what had happened was they thought they were in one area, but they actually were on another island. So originally when they were discovered, it was misdocumented where they were originally from. And it turns out it was on a couple islands over. They just misdocumented that. They said the wrong thing, essentially, in the paperwork back in the 1860s. I mean, I wasn't there. Don't blame me. Or was I? But these guys, like I said, they thought they went extinct for a long, long time until 1994. By accident, they were rediscovered on a different island than they thought that they were originally from, right? Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And ever since then, they've made a huge explosion of popularity in the pet trade. So these guys, again, they're a vulnerable species, which is on the way to becoming, unfortunately, endangered. And that is mostly due to the fact that they do have a very, very tiny island area that they live on. Just like the axolotl, they come from a very, very small space already. So the pressure is already on them because they got nowhere else to go, right? They're also from an island and they can't escape. They can't swim across the ocean to another place. They're stuck there for the rest of their lives. She's cracking me up over here and distracting me. Don't you know I'm at work? Behave. Now these guys are really neat. They're an arboreal species. Again, vulnerable, but doing okay overall, I guess. They're mostly vulnerable due to habitat loss, like most animals. And that has not helped that recently, or it has not helped, I should say, that recently there's been a lot of fires in Australia and surrounding islands and everywhere around there. So the wildfires have certainly affected them. They're actually in the news lately. New Caledonia, where they live, is for wildfires. It's really, really sad. That affects animals of all kinds, including the animals that live there in the natural environment in Australasia. So these guys are climbing the trees in their natural environment. You can see how she's climbing my hand. They're extremely arboreal. They have sticky little toes. Their name, the Crested Gecko, comes from their crests on top of their head, kind of right here, right? They have these little crests there, which are just specialized scales. The other name for the Crested Gecko is the eyelash gecko. Now, she doesn't have a huge crest. She's a wild type Crested Gecko. Like I mentioned, all of our animals today are the wild versions that you would see. This is exactly what they would look like in the wild. They do vary a little bit from place to place where you find them. She's not a wild-caught individual, so please don't judge. She was definitely a captive-bred individual, which I always recommend for your reptiles and all animals. But she's just a wild type. She's a natural coloration. They also call them buckskin. With the Crested Geckos, it's really actually kind of hard to find a wild type anymore because there's so many different morphs and colorations of them. That's a good shot of her. They're really good at climbing. They have, like I said, sticky toes, which actually have like little microscopic properties in them that are really, really complicated to explain. But it's really cool to look up. And it's hard to talk about it because I'm not a scientist. But they have really amazing toes that stick to almost any surface, especially like a tree, but even to like glass and all other smooth surfaces like that. And even hands like this. Very, very easy. They also do have a semi-prehensile tail. Some people do consider this a fully prehensile tail. I don't really consider it a fully prehensile tail. It's semi-prehensile because they can't like swing from it or anything like that. And it's not like an opossum either where they can grab items and carry them around. Opossums can't swing from their tail either, obviously, but, or I don't know if you knew that or not, but they can't. But they do use it for balance. So it's at least semi-arboreal or semi-prehensile. They're very arboreal. So they use their tail for balance and use their toes for gripping. They do have tiny little nails as well on their toes, and they have semi-webbed feet, which I don't know why. They're not an aquatic animal, but they do have semi-webbed feet. Pretty cool. They are a gecko, and geckos are very unique in the lizard grouping because they can vocalize. So geckos can make noises. Most lizards cannot make actual noises. Some lizards can hiss, right? But that doesn't count as a vocalizing. My thumb is like, thumbs up. They don't. It doesn't count as actual vocalizations, but these guys can actually produce noises. It kind of sounds like a frog. It's like a it's kind of like a frog. That's the best I'm going to do. And it's not very common that they make noise either. It's pretty rare, but they can do it. It's usually for like mating purposes and territorial purposes, just like frogs. They can do that. That's pretty unique in the lizard world. That's geckos in general. In fact, the word gecko comes from a certain type of gecko that can say the word gecko. Gecko, gecko. That sounds like their sound. Toke geckos are another type of gecko that says toke, toke. I guess they're all like little Pokemons, right? This one doesn't say Crested Gecko. It just says, so, oh well. I guess they're not all Pokemon. They're pretty cool though. She's so cute. They are nocturnal. Some people do argue and say they're crepuscular, but I think it depends on their location and it depends on the season as well. But to me, they're very nocturnal, especially in the care of humans. They only come out at night. You do not see them during the day unless they are just happen to be sleeping in a spot where you can see them. They do sleep all day long and they come out at night. They do have vertical pupils, which also indicates that they are a nocturnal species. Most nocturnal reptiles and even like cats and things have vertical pupils. The reason for that, animals that are out in the night, their pupils can dilate more, like a ball python, for example, or a boa constrictor. Those guys are also nocturnal, right? Their pupils can dilate more when it's a slitted pupil. It can actually dilate quite a bit. In the dark, if I go into the room that they live in and I turn the lights on, man, they're like out and they're like, whoa, who turned the lights on? But their pupils are really big because they've been crawling around in the dark. So they can see really well. Their eyesight is amazing. It's very, very sensitive, kind of like a frog. And they don't blink. These guys do not have eyelids. They must lick their eyes to keep them moisturized. They also have kind of like a scale over their eye. I forget the term for it. Maybe I'll think of it in just a little bit. It's not quite like a snake. A snake does have a full-on hard scale over their eye, and that protects their eye, and they never blink. These guys kind of sleepy eye. When they're sleeping during the day, their eyes will kind of droop, but they don't have full-on eyelids that can blink. So they have to lick their eyes to keep them clean. And the reason that they do that is so they can see. They're very visual animals. So having a bunch of dirt and debris on your eye is not good if you're very visual. But they do have kind of a semi-scale, for lack of better terms. I'll think of it later. Maybe I'll message you guys or type in the actual word. But it's a specific word for geckos and other animals like that. So it's not a scale. What is it? It's driving me crazy. But they do have that protective layer, we'll just say that is clear and they can see right through it. But they do have to windshield wipe debris off of their eyes with their tongue, which is pretty amazing. I wish I had a tongue that was able to do that for my eyes. I don't know why, I just think it would be cool. What do you guys have to say about the Crested Gecko? You can see she's got ears. They hear really well. Remember, they're vocalizing animals. They do hear one another and they hear sounds. So those holes on the side of her head are ears. Beautiful big eyes for seeing. All the better to with, my dear, right? Nose for smelling and breathing, of course. You'll notice that her throat, I'm trying to make her focus. Focus. There we go. The throat keeps protruding like this, kind of like a frog, right? They are kind of frog-like, aren't they, as a lizard? They're the frog of the lizard world, the geckos are, especially these guys. That indicates that she's smelling. So bringing in air like this with the throat, going up and down, that's a smelling behavior. That also goes for tortoises. If you ever see goodbye. If you ever see turtles and tortoises making their throat move like that, that indicates that they're sniffing. So she's sniffing around. She's looking around. Her pupils are very, very narrow right now because there's tons of light in here. So she's making it easier on herself by shutting those as much as she can because that's a lot of light for a nocturnal species. In fact, these guys are very easy to care for because they don't need any kind of external or like additional light is what I mean to say. You can keep them without any lights because they're nocturnal. They don't bask in the sun. They don't need any of that. Also, they don't really need a whole lot of heat either, unless you live in a very cold environment. Sorry, you live in a cold environment or something like that. They, room temperature or warmer is perfectly fine. In fact, they don't do well with very, very hot temperatures, and they certainly don't do well with a lot of heat lamps or anything like that because, number one, they're nocturnal and they don't like light, and also that dries them out. They do need quite a bit of humidity. Did she just lick her eye? I want to see her do that. They need quite a bit of humidity. So putting lamps over them just dries out all of the water. These guys don't generally need a water bowl, but they need misting at least twice a day is what I do here in our care. They are extremely easy to care for. Other than that, we keep them pretty much at room temperature because our house is pretty warm. And then we have the fan on the axolotl, right? The Woma has a heat pad. These guys don't need a heat pad as long as it's warm in your room. You don't want to put them under a draft or anything like that, but they are very hardy animals and very, very easy to care for. And misting twice a day. Can you leave it again? What if you'll jump to my other hand? That would be cool. Oh, like halfway. We'll just keep going like that. That might be cooler to show. You want to just crawl? That is super cute. They are really cute. I see why they're very popular. They also don't get very, very large. And they're all around very easy. As far as their diet, in case you guys are wondering, they are omnivores. So we had a carnivore and another carnivore with a snake, right? These guys are carnivores. Snakes are carnivores. All snakes are carnivores. They don't eat any salad or fruits and vegetables. These guys actually eat nectar and fruits in the wild, and they also eat bugs. So they're going to eat things like insects. So you want to feed them like live crickets. Maybe you can do like mealworms. You can do dubia roaches, etc. Waxworms on occasion. Waxworms are very fatty, so you don't want to do too many waxworms. It's kind of a cool view, huh? Crawl into the frame. Whoa! See how they crawl? So cool. They feel like a flower too. They're really soft. They feel like the petals of a flower. So awesome. So these guys, but they also eat nectar, like I said. So in the care of humans, luckily there's a formulated nectar or fruit and nectar blend that you can just make for them. So they eat it out of a little bowl. It's really precious. They lick it right up like a dog, or like, I don't know, the dog lick up food. I guess they're eating soft food. Anyway, they lick it right up and eat it with their tongue and their mouth. And they also catch crickets and things. So they need a balanced diet of those two things, but it's pretty easy to feed them. They're really easy to care for. No brainer, really. Now, as far as handling goes, she's my most handleable crested gecko. They're all different. Every single reptile has their own personality, and every single crested gecko is different. We do have 7 of them here at Once in a Wild. Most of them are rescues. They're hand-me-down animals that needed homes. That's why I have so many of them. I really don't want any more. I'm full up on crested geckos. We have, well, I guess I could take one more female because females can actually live together. Just to reiterate, females can live together in a large enough enclosure. It's debatable whether or not they're happy like that, but ours do just fine. We do have 2 females that live together. They're perfectly fine. Most females are fine together. Like I said, just have to give them a lot of space. And so I suppose Rue could have a friend too. We actually did lose one. I think last year we lost our old female crested gecko. So I take it back. Maybe I have room for one more. Maybe, but I'm not in a hurry to get any more crested geckos. We have way too many of them for our purposes. But they did need homes, so we were happy to help them. But anyway, all of them have totally different personalities. Rue is by far the easiest going and most handleable of all of them. So they're not all super calm like this. I know she's running around like crazy, but she's pretty calm as an individual. Most of the other ones will run right away, like really fast. And so they're more of kind of like a display animal, if you will, than holding. Geckos, I know. Geckos are so cool. They're very popular. There's many species of gecko. Here, once in a while, we have crested geckos and 2 leopard geckos as well, like I said. Well, you guys, this has been a lot of fun. I don't want to go too late. It's already 8 o'clock. We are here every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time here in Texas. And if you are in the San Antonio, Texas area, we would love to bring the zoo to you in person. We've been doing in-person animal encounters again. Of course, we're wearing masks and being careful with all of that. But absolutely, we can come and bring the animals to your classroom, to your birthday party, to your office, whatever the case may be. And just let me know and we'll work with you, of course. And we can also bring the zoo to you virtually to anyone all over the world, as long as you have internet. That's the only thing you need, right? And you can pick the animals that you want to meet, etc. See if she'll come to the camera again. Come on, Rue. Rue, by the way, is named after RuPaul because they are called the eyelash gecko as well. All of our crested geckos have kind of like similar names to Rue. We have a Rue and a Paul. Those are the 2 original crested geckos. So Rue is actually, I think she's like 5 or 6 years old already. These guys do live quite a long time as well. Remember, the axolotl can live potentially into their 30s. But usually 15 to 25 is their average. The Woma can live 20 to 30. These guys can also live about 25 years. So all these guys are very, very long commitments, aren't they? It's one thing to think about if you're bringing a reptile into your life. Most of them live a long time. So just be aware of that. That's why a lot of times we get so many that have been rehomed. A lot of people do acquire them and then realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this animal for a long time. Maybe I can't care for them anymore. I need a safe place for them to go. So we do that quite often, actually. I would say about half of our animals in our little family here are rescues or rehomed or at least hand-me-down reptiles. And we're happy to do it because we love reptiles. But anyway, it's been really, really fun. We hope to see you guys next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time here on YouTube and Facebook. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, and if you're a person that loves YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out quite a bit. There's her licking the eyes and her nose. I love that. That's one of my favorite behaviors they do. So cool. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. They're ridiculous. So like, are they even real? It is a Pokemon. So many Pokemon here once in a while. I think the Axolotl looks like a Pokemon too. Where are you going? And if you guys know our Pikachu, it's our cockatiel. But anyway, it's been fun, you guys. I hope that you have enjoyed the program. If you like what you see, please share our videos, like the videos, subscribe to YouTube, and follow us on Facebook, as well as all of our social media. All those links to the social media are in the description down below. I guess it's a bar, I don't know. The description down below, of course. All of our contact information is down there too, as well as right here on the pink bar below me. And if you guys are interested in anything, including our merch, check out onceinaWilds.com. We've got pins, we've got shirts, and we even have stickers. Beautiful stickers, all kinds of things over at onceinaWilds.com. So please let us know if you're interested. You can order them right there on the website as well. There's our beautiful Axolotl Alebrije sticker. Anyway, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you for joining. And we hope to see you next time here at Once in a Wild.
We are nothing close to ordinary, but we love to be your friend. Hold our hands and let's have fun together, singing as loud as you can. Everybody singing once in a while. Be together once in a while. I wanna hear you say once in a while. And that's the fun for me and you.
Thank you guys for joining us here at Once in a Wild, and we'll see you next time. Bye.